The member for Fredericton South and leader of his party.
We should recluse him from these files, Premier.
Order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this government recently reintegrated the roles of Justice Minister and Attorney General after they'd been independent of one another. Retired Queen's Bench Chief Justice David Smith has called on the government to separate the roles to ensure the Attorney General can carry out their work free from the kind of political interference brought to bear on the Honourable Jody Wilson-Raybould. Mr. Speaker, I want to know if the Premier will commit to separating the roles of Attorney General and Justice Minister to ensure the Attorney General's mandate is not compromised in any way.
The Attorney General.
Well, I'm not the Honourable Premier. However, I do feel that this would be an appropriate question for me to respond to, and I thank you very much for that question. When given this appointment, I was more than honored and privileged to receive it. And much to my surprise, when I entered the department on day one, they handed me a briefing binder to explain to me what it meant to be the Minister of Justice and what it meant to be the Attorney General. And I was able to push those briefing binders back and say, I understand this very much, now let's talk about the job that we need to do. When I consider the appointments that I've been given, I consider the thought that was put into this appointment that I was the right person for the job. And I can say that I have not at any point in time had the struggle between balancing being Minister of Justice and the Attorney General.
The member for Fredericton South and leader of his party.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I don't understand why the Premier would want to evade that question, but let's see about this. We've yet to see the mandates given to any of the members of his cabinet. New Brunswickers and the members of this House of Assembly need access to the mandate letters that the Premier has provided to his ministers. It's the only way we know what priorities the Premier has for each department. Without mandate letters, MLAs cannot fulfill their role to hold ministers publicly accountable. On January 23rd of this year, the President of the Treasury Board said in committee that the mandate letters were on the Premier's desk waiting for signature so that they could be made public. That was 2 months ago. Will the Premier table the mandate letters in the legislature this week before we adjourn for the next 5 weeks?
The Honourable the Premier.
Thank you for the question. And you know, I appreciate the mandate letters have been put out over the past, and a lot of times there's a lot of generic words in the mandate letters, and that's about it. If you look at our budget, you look at what we're doing collectively of priorities in the House and how we work together to achieve those. If you look at what we've been working on to date in the number of factors, the mandate letters were on my desk 2 months ago. They're not now, because I wasn't satisfied that they were going to adequately cover the issues that we're going to address. We're going to have some major priorities. Municipal reform is one of them, Mr. Speaker. Educational reform is another, Mr. Speaker. Health reform is another, Mr. Speaker. And economic development is another, Mr. Speaker. And we are going to have strategic information around getting that work done. So you can write a lot of generic stuff in order of just following the typical process of a government, or you can identify what really needs to be done after you've been there for a few months to know what has to be done. And that's what we're doing, Mr. Speaker.